Hello, if anyone is watching this, which I really don't think they would be yet, let's go on to, let's get some people on the horn here. Sorry about that. I'm going to turn up the volume a little bit. I was really surprised at how loud it needed to be last time. Apparently, I'm going to unbutton this so you don't hear all the scratches. Perhaps that'll make it worse. Let's make sure everything's working here. Oh dear. That's wrong. I am so sorry about that. Let's try this. Not YouTube. YouTube. Let's make sure that link works. Excellent. Cool. That's okay. There we go. So, tonight I wanted to talk about a couple things. The first was some updates to the site, to nantucketebooks.com, and also I wanted to give sort of a more in-depth look at Shanty, which is the markup language I use to create Nantucket ebooks. All right. So let's get back to the studio here, and I'm going to go to my browser. Here we are. So let's head to nantucketebooks.com. This is the server version. What I generally do is I test things locally. So I have a local server on my laptop where I'm going to experiment with things, try out different features. Let me try to move this microphone over. I'm going to turn down the microphone first. Okay. That looks good. Okay, so yeah, anyway, what I usually do is I will test out my features on my laptop. And then if I feel good about how things look, I will push that to GitHub. And from GitHub, and then I will go to the server where people access the site, and I'll do a git pull to that server. So anyway, that's how I push things to the site, do updates, that sort of thing. So anyway, here we are with nantucketebooks.com. You can see up here the server is on my local network. But anyway, what I'm going to do is, let's see here. What did that do? Very good. Okay, so here's the site, nantucketebooks.com, and I guess the first thing I'd like to share with people is that I have an FAQ section. This is frequently asked questions. So on this page, this is sort of in addition to the user manual for Shanty that I created. This is going to be frequently asked questions. So you have simple questions I can answer, like what are Nantucket ebooks, what is Shanty. And on top of that, I'm going to have step-by-step guides. So if I click here, oh dang, I didn't push that change yet. So how do I start writing a Nantucket ebook? And it's going to give you step-by-step what you have to do. And sorry, we have some considerable number of planes tonight. But we'll have illustrations that talk about different parts and just sort of guiding you through it. And these all have alt tags and title tags, so you're very informative. But this will just be guides to various aspects of Nantucket ebooks, starting with downloading the offline reader, which is really great because when you're a writer, that offline reader lets you test your ebooks out before you publish them. After that, we have a guide on how you start writing a Nantucket ebook that just sort of guides you through the bare minimum markup you need to get writing. And lastly, how you turn your text into a Nantucket ebook. So that's what I have so far, and this is something that will be continuously updated. I have thought about doing video tutorials, and hope everyone can hear me here. Excellent. I had thought about doing video tutorials where I would go through and talk about it. I'd still like to do that, although someone pointed out to me a problem with those is that anytime the software gets updated, the video tutorial, it's very hard to edit that to update it. With this text, it's very simple to update it to whatever the latest software update is. Easy to keep them concurrent. So I'd like to do tutorials, but in the meantime, I do like doing these live streams where we can talk about different things. So let's take a look here. Okay. We'll talk a little bit about some other things on the site. In addition to this FAQ section, I have also updated, we now have a search feature. And I wanted it to be very simple to search for things. What I do is whenever an ebook gets pushed onto the site, I will generate a catalog of all the ebooks on the site. That's a little JSON file. And the search function is going to search through that JSON file and connect it to the ebooks on the site. You have 6 different categories here you can search by. We've got title, we've got author, a username, category, keywords, description. There's also content rating. And this is something where I wanted adults to be able to have some sense of what, the general age appropriateness of an ebook is on the site. We've got 5 different categories here. You have unrated, where the writer chose not to include a rating. We have all ages, 13 and up, 17 and up, and adults. One thing I'll add here is that there's one more category, and that is X for pornography. Now, there will never be pornography on the site, but I included that X rating to distinguish it from the adults rating. So adults does not mean adult in the sense of like an adult film. It means it is made for a grown-up audience. Kind of what I guess a good analogy would be in the film industry. There's a rating called NC-17, which is the movies. It was supposed to be movies made for adults, but there was such a stigma about that they ended up never using it, and so R is now the adult category. But, down here. So let's show you some examples of how searching will work. Let's say you want to search for title. Let's search for The Trash Man, the book I published this past month. I'll search for trash. I hit return, and it's going to give me an exact match here. So I can click into that, and it will take me right to the book. Let's search a few different ways. We could search by author. Bernhard. Gives me 2 matches for the 2 books I've published. There is also category. Now, this is a newer one. It is possible to add a category for your ebook. So let's say horror. That's going to be, so I haven't set up any categories yet. Let's take a description. So I know that one of the descriptions up here for The Trash Man was, "Who will stop the train conductor before it's too late?" So let's search for conductor, see if this works. If not, I have some work to do. Okay, so I was able to find that word, conductor, in the description. A little bit about how I'm searching here. If I am on my computer, I can just click into these. I can hit the tab key to go through them, shift tab to go backwards. These are checkboxes that I can select. So like, let's select all ages, see what comes up. So here we have the Nantucket ebook platform. That comes up because it has the AA all ages rating. And when I do a search, it's going to disable all these unless I click new search, in which case everything resets. Let's take a look at something else. 17 and up. If I search by that, that's going to bring me The Trash Man. Now, if I search 17 and up and all ages, it's going to bring them both up. So a very basic search feature that I think will work very well for people. There's also username. So my username on the site is NJB. That's going to bring up my 2 books. And yeah, so let's take a look at what that might look like on some other devices. I'm going to bring it up here. A lot of people have like an iPhone 10. See, it kind of squeezes everything into a column rather than an expanded set of rows. And if I search author here, Nicholas. So down here, it's going to show up like that. In landscape, it's going to stretch it out like that instead. Let's check a tablet as well. Here's on a tablet. And in landscape on a tablet. So it just does it in different ways. That mobile responsiveness was very important to me. We'll get out of that now. That's the search feature. Very effective. And we'll go down here. Here's our news section. I do all my updates in there. Our support section, our section for writing, reading offline. And then down here I have another important section. This is your personal profile. If you remember from an earlier live stream, I had said that Nantucket ebooks, all the information relevant to you about your ebooks is kept on the device. So that is your favorite ebooks, all the notes you take in an ebook, your bookmark positions within an ebook, All those things would usually be on a server somewhere, but here they're on your device. They're in what's called the local storage of your browser. So you control your information. In the same way, there are some settings for your reading preferences that are also going to be stored locally. And so I'll give you some examples of that here in just a second. Okay. Let's head back. So you can put in a profile name. So I'll just put in NJB, click Save. Now if I do a hard reload of my page, it saved it for me, NJB. Then there's something very important that I call the block list. And I guess that connects a little bit with my philosophy of how I want the platform to look. I'm going to try, I guess you could call it a little bit of an experiment. I want to see what happens if I take say a lighter touch to the content on the site. Now, what do I mean by this? If you've seen in the past few years with social media companies, there's a lot of pressure on social media companies to take a more active role in the content on their site. So, and it's interesting that you see this across the political spectrum. You have Democrats who feel, you have liberals who feel that the social media companies need to take a more active role, take off far-right content. And then you have conservatives saying, well, you shouldn't be allowed to, you shouldn't allow to be shown that bias. You have to, or maybe there's too much liberal content. And it goes back and forth like that. And what I've seen, unfortunately, is that the way the decisions to remove a certain person from a site tends not to be based on any long-term principle. It's always the emotion of the moment, or I should say the outrage of the moment. It's if we're being honest, it's if it's going to cost them money to keep someone on the site. If it's going to be too much of a financial hit, they'll let them go. And this leads to some very odd decisions. Something that's been seen on Reddit when they ban one platform for being too hateful or promoting too many conspiracies, they'll ban some left-leaning subreddits as well to make it appear a little bit balanced. And so I didn't want to manage things based on whatever the current outrage is. I'd like to try to do something where our standards would be our standards for content are based on First Amendment principles. And what that would mean is that if you could reasonably say that speech would not be protected under the First Amendment, for example, if you're advocating imminent violence or it's very clearly libelous, then you don't have any obligation to keep it on the site. And that would be a voluntary standard. It's not a standard I have to have, but I would choose to have. The advantage is that there is a huge abundance of case law and a huge abundance of different opinions that you can go to if you have that as your standard. There's a lot to work from when you have that. And so I'd like to give it a shot. However, if you're going to have that very light standard, I think you have to give your readers as much control as possible over what they want to see. It's just as wrong to impose that you have to have these books come up in your search results. I don't think that's right either. So I think it's very, very important that readers have the ability to block what they want, and keep to block what they don't want to see and keep what they want to see. So that's where the idea of the block list comes in. I'll show you how it works here. Not sure why my computer is on full blast, but it's very odd. The game Magic the Gathering Arena. It's a card game, but my computer just starts heating up like crazy when I play it. So let's see where I am here. Okay, cool. I will go to my browser. Here we are. Let's see. Sorry, I'm just taking a look at some stuff. Okay, cool. And what's happening here? Cool. And let's see who's watching. All right. Here's how the block list works. Let's say I was up here and I search for the Trash Man. And the Trash Man's a pretty macabre story. Let's say I didn't want it to show up. And when I search for something, I don't want to have to see the Trash Man for whatever reason. Here we've got these three icons. The first icon is the user's rating. The second icon is the favorites button, so I click that and it puts it up here at the top in the favorites feed. So I click that and it goes away. I have to reset that search. Here we are. There's one more icon, and that is the block button. If I don't want to have to see that title, I'm going to click this. And let's reset the page. Now it doesn't show up anymore. I've put it in my block list, and I can confirm that by going down here. I'll open up my block list. So there's the title that I don't want to see anymore. And it's actually showing me the keyword for that particular title, which was Trash Man, and this is the identifying number behind it. So now whenever I search for something, it's not going to show up. You'll see it also took it out of the featured section as well. So it won't show up there either. And if I delete that, reload my page, it shows up again. There's some other different ways you can block things. Let's take a look here. Let's say there was a particular username. I didn't want to see anything from that user. Let's put an NJB. Add username to block list. It shows up there. And now if I go up to the top, both of the featured books that I wrote, they aren't going to show up. If I search by that username again, not going to show up. I'll search for Nantucket. Not going to show up. Okay, so that would be how you would block by a username. Let's try blocking by, what else do we have here? We'll try blocking by rating. So let's say I don't want to see anything that's for all ages. I will click that, and now if I go back up to the top, it's not going to show the Nantucket ebook platform demo book, which was rated for all ages. Reload it to confirm it. It's not going to show up. So anytime I search for something, it's going to consult that. It's going to consult the block list, the list of all the things I've blocked, and it will use that to filter the results. Let's try something else here. Let's say I didn't want anything involving train conductors. Conductor. And now I'll add that to the block list. So now anything that has conductor, I think that might not be operational yet. Let's take a look here. block description. But who will stop the train conductor? Interesting. This is all still in. Interesting. So it won't. It's not showing it in the search results anymore. But it's still showing up in featured. That's something I'll have to update. But you get the general idea. If I take it out and now I search for conductor, it's going to show up. This is called the block list. Let's block a couple things here. Like let's say we'll block all ages and NJB. Cool. If I reload, so that works. Those are hidden. Now let's say that I wanted to copy those settings over some of my personal set preferences over to another site. What I have here is a button called Copy My Settings. If I click that, I get an alert. I'm not sure if you can see it here. It says your reader settings are now copied to the clipboard. You may now paste the settings somewhere else. So I click OK. And now I will open up another notepad here. Come on. Cool. And actually, so let's see here. I will go to the notepad. And I'm going to go to Upload Reader Settings. So down here, if you'd like to upload your prior reader settings, just paste them into the field below and hit the button. So if you are bringing over some profile settings from another device, you go over here. I'm going to paste it in, and if I click Upload New Settings, it is going to say attempting to upload reader settings copied on December 4th, 2020. So I click OK. And let's take a look here. It's got NJB and all ages. If I reset it, go back here, it's got it all saved. But I'm going to click those things so that I have full access to what's in the database. So anyway, so that was our search setting and how you can use a block list to really curate your feed. And I'm very glad to show those things. And we also had the FAQ section we talked about. Let me just quickly check if there's any questions in the chat. Nothing so far. Cool. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about Shanty. All right. Sorry about that noise. Making some ice. Okay, let's talk a little bit about Shanty. Shanty is a markup language that I wrote, and you use it to create Nantucket ebooks. The idea is that instead of writing your manuscript and then spending a lot of time making it fit into an ebook, you just write your text, and then the computer creates the ebook from that instantaneously. So, I thought it might be interesting if we looked at a book that I actually wrote in the Shanty markup language and see how that translates into the final, how it translates into one of these ebooks. So let's open up the trash man here. And now I'm going to go over to my notepad. Go to the browser here. I know I was on Trash Man, but let's go back. Here we are, Nantucket ebook platform. Go up to the top. So, when we put in our title, that's what creates the title here. Below that, we have our subtitle, which was a better way to read online. Our author was Nicholas Bernhard, so it automatically, so by default, it's going to use by as the credit. You can set a different credit, like if you wanted to write most masterfully composed by. You could absolutely set that in as a custom option. But anyway, here is our title. And as far as the audiobook goes, let's go into the audiobook edition. And we set that background bit, the path to the background image. Now for the background on this book, all I did was use the cover here. And what the program does is it takes that cover, blows it up, and adds a diffusion to it, so it has this nice frosted glass look. But anyway, it grabbed it from that tag. And I hope just from this you can kind of see the power of the markup language, which is that, if I could go back here to my notepad. And now if we go into the browser, because of that one little line, it knew to grab the file. It knew to grab that image, blow it up, add a diffusion filter. It did all that for me. So you get this very nice looking ebook that you can give your readers. But as a writer, it's very little effort to do that. And I think that's really cool. It also added that copyright information down here. You could set that to public domain as well. For example, audiobooks from LibriVox.org are in the public domain. So, let's keep going. Go back to our notepad here. Browser. Cool. I'll go to the end. And at the very end, I get this supporters. It generates this supporter section. This work was made possible thanks to the following individuals. Their support is gratefully acknowledged. And so here are people who supported me on Patreon. and it's going to separate them by membership tier, starting with the most expensive membership tier. So my most expensive tier is called Where Do You Get Those Crazy Ideas? And then the second tier is Audience Choice. So it automatically sorted them and presented them that way. It just does it for you. Currently, we have Patreon and Coffee are the two crowdfunding platforms where I can take their spreadsheets and it automatically parses them. I am hoping to add some others as the needs arise. Like I'd love to have Kickstarter. And what else? Definitely Kickstarter. And another one would be LibrePay, which is a European platform, which I'm quite interested in, which is geared for people developing free software. Excuse me just a second. I'm going to grab some water. All right. There we go. Let's keep going. Just gonna add that in. I designed this cover myself. It's an edited version of a painting by Caspar David Friedrich called Stages of Life. So that's how simple it is to add in a cover. Go back to the browser here. If I go into my audiobook, here is the title. And if you have an audiobook with more than one file, you can click here and it will bring up a full screen menu of all the files within that book. And of course, I could produce a mobile responsive ebook. So there's your audio player. But that's how audiobooks are arranged. Go back to hear how that looked in the final product. A better ebook. So we got this stylized here. And then after that, I've got some more stylized text. Go to my notepad. Go back to the browser. And if you look there, anyone including you. So the including you is italicized. That came out. Okay, so I went down here. Read anywhere. On the other side, Project Gutenberg's ebooks. So that's the text that I wanted to display, but it's going to take me to that link. It's going to take me to the Gutenberg edition of Moby Dick. Very cleanly like that. So, that's a link. Here, browser. Here is a Nantucket illustration. I talked in the initial live stream that this feature comes from antiquarian books. I loved in old books where you'd have like an illustration plate as you were reading, and it was printed on nicer paper and it was inserted into the binding, and it would often include some bit of text explaining how the illustration related to the book. And it was always a real treat when you were reading some old text to come across one of those illustration plates. So I tried to kind of recreate that feeling. What you do when you come across an illustration like this, if it has this little enlarge icon, I can either click on the illustration or I could click on the enlarge icon, and it'll focus the illustration for me. And here's the illustration on this side. This was a bad one to start with. This is just an illustration of what not to do, you could say. But it has a title and an alt tag for accessibility. And then over here we can have a caption. We'll have a caption about it. Sometimes I like to include a line from the book. They can think, oh, that's how the illustration and the text connect. You can also put in the name of the illustrator, and if you have worked with the illustrator and you're selling prints of that illustration, You can include a link to the web store where your readers can buy a copy of that. Click the close button, and that's how these illustrations work. Now let me show you how you'd create one of these illustrations. So, let's take a look at how that appears. It's a better example, actually. Here's our illustration. We can tell we can focus it because of this enlarge icon. So I'm going to click on it here, and there it is. Alice meets the caterpillar. You've got it on one side. I'll show you how this looks on a portrait, for example. If I was on an iPad, it's going to have the illustration up at the top, and then caption and illustrator on the bottom. If I switch over to landscape mode, have them side by side. If I was on an iPhone, it's going to have it here, and then the caption below it. So that's an example. That's how it adapts to different things. And I created it with just those few lines of text. Let's go back. Down here we've got a plain illustration. So this is just some bare bones stuff. And what I'm going to do is, let's take a look in the Look at the end result, and we'll go backward from there about how we made it. I was very excited to get footnotes to work. Okay. We'll go down, and here's another illustration. Up here I had no, not yet. Note-taking. Okay. There's our plain illustration. You see I can't focus on it. Does it have an alt tag? It does. Good. If you are going to be writing, I highly recommend alt tags. Essentially, the alt tag is what's displayed if the image doesn't display. And so for people who are blind or otherwise have a really hard time reading, there's ways that you can get to that alt tag. It's the alternative to the image. And there's ways of you can do text to speech on the alt tag. And so you can see, okay, this is what was supposed to be here. They're very useful in that regard, and now there's actually some laws about, you have to include some amount of alt tags on your site. I'm not totally qualified to talk about it, so I try to err on the side of using it as often as possible. We go down here. Let me make sure I'm on the browser. Cool. I was here. And here's our footnote. So let's see. Any notes you take are held in your browser's local storage, not on a server. Unlike notes in Kindle ebooks, which can be seen by Amazon, you have total control over your Nantucket ebook notes on your device. So if I click on that note here, it goes down to the bottom, and it gives me this note. And so this is the note that goes with it, that at one point Amazon did reach into people's Kindles and grab a book off that and delete it. It's like, no, you can't have that book anymore. And for me, this is the equivalent of you buy a book at a bookstore, and the people from the bookstore or the publisher can come into your home and grab that book off its shelf, even though you paid for it, and supposedly it's your property. So I talk about that in this footnote at the bottom here. And so then if I want to go back up to wherever I was, I can click this button, and it takes me back up here to the footnote number. So anyway, that is what footnotes look like in Nantucket ebooks. Now we'll talk about how we made it. First, I'll check if we have any questions. No, not. Well, maybe someone's watching. That'd be cool. If you have any questions, just put it in the chat. I'm happy to answer it for you. You can also ask me questions on my Twitter handle, which is @NantucketEbooks. Okay. So here we were, and now I'll go to the notepad and show you how I did it. browser. You can also add GIFs in as an illustration. So right here, this is a GIF that is playing. I can focus on it just like any other illustration. And this was important because I needed the image to change to show how that works. You can kind of tell that this GIF was from a while ago because I only had these few made at that point. I only had those features. It even has the old icons for dark mode and bookmarking. I added in cleaner icons later. But yeah, you can add GIFs. I would caution against using too many GIFs because they tend to be pretty big in terms of file size, and they're not great in terms of the ratio between file size and quality. I would tend to stick with PNGs because you can have transparency, and they're an open standard, unlike JPEG, which is a proprietary standard. But you can use JPEGs, PNG, you can use GIFs, and you can also use SVGs, as long as you're careful with them. Okay, what else we got here? Looked in the final product here. So I'll go down. Here we are. Support my work on Patreon. So it added in that title. This is an Nantucket ebook, and it's got the links here. And after that, we've got our supporters. Then we've got the link for downloading the ebook, the button for copying all your notes. You got your credits here. So if you have like a cover artist or an illustrator, those will also go down here. We've got our footnotes, and then we've got down here says some information on the source code and so forth. One feature that this ebook doesn't have is the line breaks that I talked about. When I get my skeleton horror story up, that has a lot of the angle brackets, and I'll show you how those work. I actually use line breaks or thematic breaks created by another art and a guy who was specialized in CSS. I asked him for permission to use his code, and he did a fantastic job with it. So let's see here. I wanted to talk also about Let's head back up here. Page up. And let's get you seeing what I'm... Here for browser. We see that, and so there's our copyright, and that's just the copyright for the text. But it added in our copyright symbol. Now for location and date, this is something I took from from the works of Stephen King. Is that he would, at the end, he would put kind of where he'd put where he'd written his novel, and then he'd put the date that he finished writing it. And I always liked that. I thought it was cool because it rooted his story in a certain time and place. Stephen King, in his memoir, he talked about how writing is like telepathy, that you are communicating with your reader across time and space without saying a word. And by putting in that date and that location at the end of his novels, you could almost sort of imagine him writing at his desk and setting, or hitting that final period on the typewriter, or setting down his pen in the case of Dreamcatcher, and being done with his story. So I always liked that you could have that. It's a little bit like a signature. It's sort of like a temporal signature. That this was finished here, and this was finished at this location at this spot. I think it's sort of a fun feature. And to add that, you just put it up at the top. It could also help in searching for your story. You could set up some sort of search feature where you're searching by where it was a certain thing was written, when it was written. Anyway, that is a lot of making an ebook. There's some other features that I'd be happy to share in a future live stream, like adding a dedication. There's stuff about adding poetry. That's not an immensely robust feature yet, because a lot of poetry is how it's arranged on the page, and it would be far beyond my capabilities to include all of that. But if you have a very basic poem of quatrains or that sort of thing, it's quite easy. There's a very, very minimal markup to add that, and it looks very nice, I think. What else? Let's take a look, actually. Best way to look at that. So I'm going to go to the website /Shanty Docs. There's our manual. And as you can see, just from the table of contents, there is a lot you can do with this markup language. But what I like is you don't have to know a lot. You only have to know like 10% of this to have a functioning ebook. But if you want to customize it, you can go crazy. And I've included all sorts of examples here. Here's the basics that we talked about. Oh, here's an example of a break. I don't know if you can see this here, but this is what a thematic break looks like. It's this nice gradient, a nice symmetrical gradient that goes across. Here's our bold and italicized text. You can align your text. So, for example, if you want text to go back and forth, left, right, center, easy to do. Sorry about that. We have our subtitles here. You can add special credits, as I said. Written most ingeniously by Mr. Toad. We've got our dates and locations. Here's a good one. If you want to add an epigraph or a quote, I love when a good story starts with some sort of epigraph that can set the mood. And so in this case, here's from a story called Sweet Relief that I will have on the site soon. And it's set down in southwest Colorado near the Black Canyon of the Gunnison. So I started with this quote from Rudyard Kipling, who actually visited the Black Canyon at the start of the 20th century, and he wrote this very nice, sort of chilling talk about his time there. And so you can see how this would fit on the page. Hope I'm cool. You've got it. You can have narrower margins. It's italicized, and then you can put your quote after that. And it's all formatted. It's all within HTML formatting, so the search engines will understand the structure of your document. You can add really long words in. Footnotes we talked about. There's a special tag for the end. Here's our discussion of poetry. You can add comments. Comments are stuff that only the writer will see. It gets ignored when you're building the ebook. So if you want to add a note to yourself, that's a great way to do it. Bunch here about adding art, cover images, illustrations, adding an image, doing audiobooks, stuff like copyright, search keywords, page descriptions. You could add, if you're writing in a different language, you can set whatever language it happens to be. Stuff for monetizing, customizing. So for example, in the first live stream we talked about how if you have a very short ebook, having an inline table of contents may not make sense. So this little small thing will prevent that inline table of contents from generating, which might make your ebook look a little cleaner. I suppose you could add custom style sheets, custom HTML, although do be very careful with that. Then we talk about favoriting here. At the very bottom of this page, we've got some examples. So for the book that we just looked at, the Nantucket ebook platform, if I click here, it's going to take, oh, good, it works. So it's going to take me to the book. But let's say I wanted to see what it looked like originally. You can just click down here, original Shanty text, and here is the original. So this is the text file. This is a copy of the text file that I used to make the ebook. And I think if you're interested in getting going with writing on a Nantucket, oh, I'm sorry about that. If you're interested in writing a Nantucket ebook, this would be really good to look at because you can see, okay, this part does this. Fun thing to do would be to try to break it. Like, if I remove this, does it crash? Or does it look wrong? That could be an interesting way to learn. Always good to learn by trial and error. Try making mistakes. At least I've found that's been very useful for me. Let's check if there's been any. Okay. I see AT our software agents is here. Very glad to have you. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. This would be a great time to go over particular things. I see, I have my link here still for Moby Dick. This is the Project Gutenberg ebook for Moby Dick. So this is at gutenberg.org, and it's just an HTML file. And Project Gutenberg is really amazing. It's all books that are in the public domain that people have scanned. They've created a digital text file of it. They've set it in HTML, and they do this for all sorts. So a huge amount of the Western canon. If you want to read some old classic literature, you can view it. You can go to this site and read it in your browser for free, and that's just amazing. The problem is that it looks like this. So this is all orderly. This is cool. They've got the table of contents, and if I were to click like the fossil whale, it takes me down to chapter 104, and you got your epilogue. They've got some pre-formatting here this is a fun part of Moby Dick, is they talk about you get a full education of whales before the book even starts. But they have it in these different languages like Hebrew, Greek, Latin. You have every quote ever about whales up to that point, up to the point it was written. Anyway, then you have your actual text. Now, I think this looks. I'm sorry about that. I think this just seems a little bit hard to read for me. I can't imagine anybody reading Moby Dick like this. Thank God there is an outstanding audiobook edition on LibriVox, read by, it's not Ted DeLorme, Stuart Mills, I think it is. And that is a fantastic audio. If you ever wanted to read Moby Dick, listen to that audiobook. But this doesn't look quite right. Before I get to answering any questions, let's see what I would do. Let's go into head. And we got our style here. Here we are. Body, background. So I'm just going to edit the style sheet here. Let's give it a seashell background like a Nantucket ebook has. So that's FF5EE. That's not right. FFF. There's our seashell background. Let's see. No, come on. Here we are. Oh, come on. I can do it. Font family. Verdana. Okay, that's a little better. Another thing I would probably do is I'd put space instead of this is using indentations for separating paragraphs. So the paragraphs are stacked on each other, but they use indentations. That works well for books and for traditional ebooks like EPUB or Kindle. I've read some ebooks, The Player of Games by Ian Banks, where they use that. I've also read Bloodwing by Shane Lachlan Black, where I think he used it as well. It works well for that format, but it doesn't work for if you're reading in the browser. If you're in the browser, I think no indentations and then spaces between paragraphs. Then I'd want to increase the font size quite a bit. And at that point, like even that would be better. But I understand that this ebook was probably made a long time ago. But that's a big part of why I created Nantucket ebooks, is I wanted a better way for people to read books in the browser. Anyway, I love what Gutenberg did. I think online ebook, browser-based ebooks could be better. And let's check over here. Oh, just browsing. Cool. So, let's see if there was anything else that I wanted to discuss. If you hadn't caught it, I talked also about we've got a search feature on the site where you can search for things. If you're on a desktop, just hit enter. If you're on a smartphone or a tablet, just hit the search button. We also have a block list down here where if you want to curate your feed, if you don't want certain authors or certain titles to show up in the featured section or in the browse or when you search, you can set that all up and it's private to you. No one else can see your search feed. But anyway, those are some of the features I've added, and then I highly encourage people to check out this FAQ section. And if you have any questions or questions come up, I would be happy to add them in here. I really enjoy making these tutorials. I also feel a little bit better about making these as good as possible, because it's very easy for me to edit these tutorials and make them as clear as possible. With a video, you kind of have to make a new video each time, and I'd love to do some more videos, but for now, talking through things in these live streams works for me, and really making these as good as possible. It lets me build on what I've already built. Let's see. So, I guess the one other thing I would talk about, if you're interested in writing with Nantucket ebooks, I'd be happy to talk with you about that. We're still in our trial program. You can email me at njb@nantucketebooks.com. In addition, you can also message me on Twitter, which my Twitter is at Nantucket ebooks. You can contact me in the comments of the YouTube live streams. And another way of communicating that I'm interested in trying out is IRC. There is an official IRC server for this site. It's going to be nantucketebooks.com, port 6667. It's currently password protected, but if you're interested in being part of that, I think it could be a lot of fun. IRC is very easy to use. It's a very mature technology. There's not a lot left in terms of bugs with it. And it's all running on free software. There's nothing proprietary about it in the way that like Discord or like Google Hangouts would be. Actually, when I was building this site, when I was getting feedback, I did one feedback session with a friend, and we did it through IRC chat. What was really cool about that is that at the end of that discussion, I had the chat log, so I could copy everything that we said into a text file, so I could read through it. You didn't even have to really make notes while you were writing. Yeah, it was all just copied. So that was a fun aspect to it. If someone's interested, just message me on Twitter, send me an email. I'd be happy to get you the password, and we could get going on that. I would love to have a place where writers and readers could discuss books on this site. Oh goodness, I've been talking for a while. I think I'm going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I'll be doing more of these live streams as I make improvements to the site. We're now on a version system, so updates to the core technology are going to be a little bit more organized. And certainly, if you have any questions, just let me know. I'll check one more time here. Okay. And what else was I going to say? I personally hope to have another short story up this month. I look forward to in addition to some stories I had written earlier that I will be uploading now. The Trash Man was sort of the first one that was supported by patrons, so I wanted to get that one up first. But I hope to add then A Skeleton Popped Out and Sweet Relief as well, and have those with their audiobooks. There is another book that I look forward to adding from another author, and it's going to be a science fiction story that I heard a little bit of it today, and I'm really excited about it. The audiobook for this is top notch. It's like a full audio drama. It almost reminds me of The Golden Compass. The audiobook for The Golden Compass is really well done. They got actors for each part. and it does sort of sound like a radio play. This one goes further and adds sound effects, and I think they've done a great job with it. So I look forward to sharing more of that with you at some point. I look forward to having that on the site. But thanks for watching, and I look forward to sharing more updates on Nantucket ebooks and Shanty as they progress. I hope you have a great night. Bye.